Hello guys, good morning. I hope you all are doing great. Welcome back to my channel with a very interesting and important video on CompTIA 2201102, that is the latest from CompTIA A Plus Core 2 exam. So here I am going to cover important points which you guys need to go through. This is going to be very helpful for all of you whoever is planning to write or prepare for A Plus Core 2 exam. My name is Sheikh Rashid Javed. I am a certified EC Council instructor. I'm into cybercrime and also as an instructor with EC Council with almost more than 20 global certifications related to network security and cloud. So let's get started here. This is our 2201102. I did this exam yesterday, so I'm trying to cover important points which we need to remember to be able to prepare for this exam. So if you see here's on my screen, I did this exam yesterday. I was able to pass this exam. So apart from this, I did other exams like I started with SY0501, which is Security Plus. Then I did CompTIA IT Fundamentals. Then I did the latest CompTIA Security Plus. Then the latest N10008 Network Plus. Then I did Core 1 and Core 2. So normally what happens when you are planning for these certifications from CompTIA, they say that you can start with A plus, then you go with you start with IT fundamentals, then you go with A plus, then you might go with network plus, then you go with security plus. But it is up to you, whatever you like. The way, if you see here, I started with security plus. This also helped me a lot. There are other benefits, depends on whatever way you like. So I mean to say that you can use any path here. So it's not mandatory, but they recommend that if you start like this is how you are supposed to. But if you start the other way around, this is also going to help you. So it doesn't matter whatever path you choose. But for me, since I am interested in network security and cloud, so I will be doing maybe a CYC plus, and then I will go for maybe pen test plus, and the last I'll be doing is CAS plus. So these are the exams I am planning to write with CompTIA, because with EC Council I have done almost all the important exams related to cybersecurity, because my area of interest is network security and cloud. So let's see what are the important points we need to remember here. So this is the table of content. We have to go through these modules. Lesson 10 is on how to configure Windows. Lesson 11 is managing Windows. Then you got lesson 12 is identifying operating system types and features. 13 is supporting Windows. 14 is managing Windows networking. In 15 you got to understand how you manage Linux and Mac operating system. Then 16 is how you configure SOHO, which is your small office home office network security. Then 17 is on how you manage security settings. 18 is supporting mobile software. 19 is using support and scripting tool. 20 is on how you implement operational procedures. So these are the modules which we need to go through, because if you see the other modules till 10, that is covered in the previous one, that is 2201101. So this is 2201102. This is the latest code. Okay, so please check those codes. This is core 1 and this is core 2. So this is core 1, 2201101, and that you got 2201102. So these are official labs. I am just giving an overview because I have gone through the official book. I have also gone through these labs. I'm going to record end the video where I will let you know what are the important resources you need to have to be able to prepare for any exam, because I did these exams with CompTIA. I did most of those exams with EC Council. I did with ISACA. I did with Microsoft Azure. So these are official labs. You got to explore the VM lab environment, manage user settings in Windows, supporting Windows 11, configure Windows system settings. So in short, we need to understand all of those settings which we have in Windows 10 and Windows 11, mostly user management console, how we use task manager, monitor performance and event log, use command line tools, support Windows 10, perform Windows 10 OS installation, Ubuntu, then how you install and configure an application, troubleshoot system and services, troubleshoot a Windows OS, configure Windows networking, folder sharing, support Active Directory domain, Linux. Then you got to understand about Linux command line tools, support and troubleshoot network host, configure Soho router security, workstation security, browser security, or some troubleshooting scenarios. Then you got how to use remote access technologies, how you use backup and recovery, PowerShell, and support tickets. So these labs are very interesting because they're going to cover all that what you need to know, because after doing this certification maybe you are planning to work as a technical support. This is very important. If I have been working as a technical support with AT&T long back, 12-15 years back, I remember how important it was. After that I worked with a university as an assistant professor, then I started working as a freelancer. I was a trainer in cybersecurity. Now I work as a trainer. My area of interest is network security and cloud. I keep traveling. I interact with a lot of organizations, government, private, college, universities, where we discuss on what are the requirements when it comes to network security and cloud. So let's see what we need to remember. This is going to be very helpful, guys, because I have gone through the official book. So from that book I just got some important points, and when I was writing my exam yesterday, I remember this was very helpful because I have not kind of done much of the practice. I just have gone through the book. I have gone through the lab, because I know I have my networking concepts are clear, security concepts were clear, cloud concepts were clear, or Windows I have been troubleshooting, so I had that kind of confidence. But exam is very difficult. I was not expecting this exam to be difficult. Sometimes if you check with CompTIA, you never kind of you expect something which you have never maybe gone through, or something which is different, but it is built on those basic concepts. So they want to make it sure that you know things properly. Only if you know things properly, that is going to make you choose right answer. Otherwise there'll be confusing answers. Maybe I record another video where I'll discuss all of that. But let's see what you got to remember in lesson 10, configuring Windows. We need to remember operating system is a software that provides a user interface to the computer hardware, and it provides an environment in which we can run software applications and we can create computer network. So that is the actual definition of software. It acts as an interface between we users and the hardware. We can also run software applications and create computer networks. All Windows configuration data is held in a database called registry. Each icon in a control panel represents an applet used for some configuration tasks. We need to understand why we have a registry in our computer. What is an applet? Because if there's some other technician being your colleague, he might say, hey, can you please open that applet? So we need to understand what they are talking about. User account controls access to the computer, we know that, but each user account is associated with a profile. The profile contains default folders for personal documents, pictures, videos, and music. I was able to see a relevant question related to this concept in this exam yesterday. I'm not saying exactly what the question was, but I got a question which was related to this concept. So we need to remember this. So we know each user has an account, but account is connected with a profile, and that profile is connected with those folders. Standard users have privilege on their profile only rather than the whole computer. A Microsoft account gives access to Microsoft Cloud services and allows sign in and sync desktop settings and user profile data across multiple devices. Nowadays we know we have multiple devices. So I'm sitting right now, I have 3 screens in front of me. I have my phone, I have my maybe tablets, laptops, tablets, and all that. So we have multiple accounts. So that's why we need a cloud account. Privacy settings govern what usage data Windows is permitted to collect and what device functions are enabled and for which app. So sometimes it might ask you to enable or disable those privacy settings. We need to understand what they are talking about. ease of access setting is for vision. So I also got a question related to this concept. We need to understand. They will ask a question that user is trying to see how to get speech and eye control input for a person who is physically handicapped. So he needs to go through this option. So what are the settings? So that's ease of settings. I was able to see a question in this exam yesterday related to this concept. So ease of access setting is for vision configuration options. You can also use it as a narrator tool. You can also go to hearing configure options. You can do interaction configuration options, speech and eye control input methods, which are found under accessibility in Windows 11. So ease of access is known as accessibility in Windows 11. Please remember that also. Each drive contains a directory called the root directory. Root directory is represented by a backslash. Windows folder containing drivers. It contains logs, add-on applications, system and configuration files, like system32, fonts and so on. But end user data has a registry data. The File Explorer option applet in control panel governs how Explorer shows those folder and files. So they may ask a question related to this also. So there's an option which is used to see folder and file options. So that's your File Explorer option, because it governs how Explorer is going to show you folders and files. Search is also governed by settings which are configured in the indexing options applet. This allows you to define index locations and rebuild the index. A corrupted index is a common cause of search problem. Now they might ask you a question, and this could be the answer. So this is very important if we remember those points. Legacy user account applet in control panel can no longer be used to add account. Right? So if you need to add an account, what you need to do, you need to go to the settings. So it says here, legacy user account applet in control panel can no longer be used to add account. Advanced configuration and power interface specification is designed to ensure that software and hardware compatibility for different power setting modes. So please remember those points, because I have kind of got those important points from the official book. So this is a reference, once you're done with the book, once you're done with practice questions, but at the last, before you go for exam, you want something as a quick reference guide, and this is for you guys. But I highly recommend that you attend the official CompTIA training. There are several levels of ACPI power mode, starting with S0, which is power on, and ending with S5, which is soft power off, and G3, which is mechanically powered off. So please remember those options. So when you send your computer to standby or suspend, so what does that mean? It suspends to RAM. When you do a standby, it suspends to RAM. But when you do hibernate, it suspends to disk. So please remember these two lines. You're going to answer one question in exam. It cuts power to most advanced but maintains power to the memory. So this is also known as ACPI mode S1 to S3. But if you see hibernate, it saves and opens but unsaved file data in memory to disk and then turns the computer off. This is also known as ACPI mode S4. So what's the difference? Standby sends it to the RAM, hibernate sends it to the disk. A laptop goes into a standby state as normal, but if running on battery power, it will switch from standby to hibernate before battery runs down. A desktop creates a hibernation file and then goes into a standby state. This is known as hybrid sleep. So they may ask a scenario, what is hybrid sleep? We need to understand. So a desktop creates a file, hibernation file, and then goes into a steady state. Modern standby utilizes a device's ability to function in an S0 low power idle mode to maintain network connectivity without consuming too much energy. Installing a store app does not require confirmation with UAC. So you might have seen when you try to download an app, it just gives you a UAC, kind of someone is trying to do something, do you allow it or not? But if you install a store app, it doesn't require confirmation with UAC or computer administrator level privilege, because it just creates a sandbox environment. Windows subsystem for Linux allows the installation of Linux distribution and use of Linux application. So there's a feature in Windows which allows you to use Linux applications, that is WSL. Game mode suspends Windows update. So when you play a game, when you have a game mode on, it's going to suspend Windows update. Okay, so that's important about lesson 10. Those are important points, so please remember them. Now lesson 11 is managing Windows. So operating system is the software, we saw the definition, so that provides a user interface to the computer hardware and provides an environment in which to run software applications and create computer networks. Driver updates might be supplied through a Windows update, typically listed as optional updates. Disabled device are shown with a down arrow. So there might be a scenario asking, like, the driver has a down arrow, what does that mean? Or when you do a troubleshooting, you will be able to see the down arrow, that means it is disabled. HDD and SSDs can be divided into logical partitions. Each partition is represented as a volume. So partition and volume, that is same thing. A volume is a logical storage unit which is made available to the operating system. In Windows, drive refers to a volume that has been mapped to a ladder. Now guys, see, there's a lot of confusion, when they talk about partition, when they talk about volume, or when they talk about drive, it is going to be same. But drive has a ladder. So a volume with a ladder is your drive. Recovery partitions contain tools to repair a damaged installation or return computer to its factory settings. So please remember this concept also. You are going to get one question in exam. You're going to see one question. Installing a store app does not require confirmation with UAC or computer admin level privilege. We saw that concept. A new partition must be written with a file system. So when you create a partition, you need to write it with a file system. The smallest unit of storage on a fixed disk has traditionally been 512 byte sector. So if you see, disk is divided into track sectors and clusters. So this is the smallest unit on disk. Smaller cluster. Now what's the benefit? Smaller clusters make more efficient use of disk capacity, but using larger cluster can improve file input output performance, especially when working with large files. Now small clusters have their own benefits, but large size also has its own benefit. That's the reason some disk models now use advanced format with 4K sector size. So you cannot format or delete system or boot partition during the setup. The boot partition must be formatted as NTFS and the system partition must be formatted as FAT32. If there is more than one disk available, a new dynamic volume can be configured. Dynamic volumes use multiple devices to implement some type of software redundancy such as mirroring. So dynamic disk feature is deprecated. The storage specs feature is now preference method. Now they might give you a scenario where they say that you need to use a dynamic disk, but those are the options available. Now guys, if you have gone through the official book but you want to use a refresher guide before you go for exam, this is for you, because I'm not going in detail, but I'm just giving you an idea what you need to remember. What does that mean? Just an overview as a reference, quick reference guide. If a boot volume has less than 20% free space, performance can be impaired. When space drops below 200 MB, a low disk space warning is generated. Now they might give a scenario, there's a low disk space warning. What does that mean? So these are the options. Maybe space drops below 200. So what you need to do guys is just remember those points. Defragment and optimize drive tool, in short dfrgi.exe, runs various operations to speed up performance of disk. On an HD, defragmenting rewrites file data so that it occupies contiguous clusters, but on an SSD, data is stored in units called blocks and that are not directly managed by the operating system. But the drive controller determines how blocks are used according to wear level routine to minimize degradation of solid state cells. So that is the reason they might recommend that you cannot use when you use defragmentation, that doesn't give you that much benefit on SSD. So the main purpose of optimizer tool is to instruct the controller to run a TRIM operation. So what's TRIM? It's a process by which controller identifies data that the OS has marked as deletable and can then tag corresponding blocks as writable. So optimizer does perform a type of defragmentation operation. It's a type, it's not actual defragmentation what you do in hard disk, but it's a type. So if it holds the OS and then system protection feature, volume shadow copy services enable. Windows automatically schedules the disk optimizer to run using task scheduler. So the disk cleanup is a tool that's going to track files that can be safely erased to reclaim disk space. So there was a question where you had a lot of those tools where you need to choose the exact tool. So there was a question. So if you remember what these tools do, you're going to answer the question. So the task manager is going to run commands and script automatically. Local user and group console is going to provide an advanced interface where you can create, modify, disable or delete user account. There's also a certificate manager console which shows which certificates have been installed and provides a mechanism for requesting and importing new certificates. Even if you know those commands, you can also solve. This is a performance based question. So there are multiple choice questions. There's also a performance based question. So those who did previous exam with CompTIA, you know how difficult those performance based questions are. So if you know these commands, you are going to solve one performance based question. There are 4 questions performance based which I saw in yesterday's exam. So validity of each certificate is guaranteed by issuing certificate authority. certmanager.msc is going to manage certificates for the current user. There's also a computer certificate store which can be managed through certlm.msc. Group policy editor is going to provide a more robust means of configuring many Windows settings than editing the registry directly. The local security policy can be used to modify security settings, and Windows Registry provides a remotely accessible database for storing operating system, device and software application, and you can use the regedit to view or add the registry. So there was a question where they ask you a tool which you can use to add the registry. Registry is structured as a set of 5 root keys that contain computer and user database. So there's an HKLM that governs system-wide settings. Then HK users include settings that apply to individual users, profiles such as desktop personalization. Then there's HK current user. It's a subset of HK users with the settings for logged in user. So we need to remember what they have, because they might ask you a question. They will ask you you need to check the settings related or profile of an individual user. So which hive you need to go to. So the registry database is stored in binary file called hives. Most of these files are stored in C Windows System 32 config folder, but the hive file for each user profile, which is entuser.dat, is stored in the folder which is holding the user's profile. There's also Microsoft Management Console, which is a container for one or more snap-ins where you can just customize it, add those snap-ins. If a single physical disk is divided into 3 partitions, how many different file system can be supported? So 3, because each partition can use a different file system. So please remember this concept. The system partition contains the boot files, but the boot partition contains the system root OS files. Boot partition is normally assigned the drive letter C, but system partition is normally assigned a drive letter. So this is another tool which is System Information MS-Info32, which is going to give you a comprehensive report about system hardware and software components. Event Viewer is your management console where you can view and manage those logs. So they will give you a question or a scenario where there's you need to identify those logs for Windows. You can go to Event Viewer. System log. Now what are the different logs? There's a system log, there's an application log, there's a security log, there's a setup log. System log, application log, security log, setup log. So please remember what each log contains. System log contains information about events that affect the core operating system, like service load failures, hardware conflict, drive load failure, network issue. I was able to see a question based on this concept where they will ask you about these logs or maybe these logs. So you need to remember what system log stores. Application log contains information regarding non-core process and utilities and some third-party apps. For example, app installer write event to the application log. Security log is going to contain audit data. Setup log, events which are generated during the installation. So most of those logs will be here in the system. Application, any application related log. Security will be audit log, and setup is going to contain those logs which are generated during the installation. Rest, all of those logs will be by default in the system log. Each log file has a default maximum size, usually about 20 MB, but you can change this by selecting properties on the appropriate log. Task Manager can be used to monitor the PC's key resource. You can go to it by typing Ctrl+Shift Escape or right click the taskbar or Ctrl+Alt+Delete. Resource Monitor is other tool which shows enhanced version of the sort of snapshot monitoring provided by Task Manager. There's also Performance Monitor which can be used to provide a real-time chart of system resource or can be used to log information to file for long-term analysis. Now what's the difference? Resource monitoring is for live monitoring, but performance monitor is for measuring and comparing counters over time and for collecting those traces. So please remember the difference. In performance monitor, you can create log files referred to as data collector set to record information where you can view them later. In performance monitor, counter logs allow you to collect statistics about resource. Trace logs can collect statistics about services. So there's also msconfig, which is used to modify various settings and files that affect the way the computer boots and loads. So please remember, what these tools do: resource monitor, performance monitor, event viewer, or msconfig, or all those tools, device manager, and all that. We need to remember because you're going to answer a lot of those questions. To add boot path, you have to use the bcd edit command. You can also log boot events. The boot log file is saved at this location. It is not shown in the event viewer. In Windows 11, command interface is redesigned as the Windows terminal. When run as an admin, the title bar shows administrator command prompt and the default folder is C Windows System 32 rather than C username. Display help on a particular command by using this switch. So if you need a help on a particular command, you can do that command and /?. You can use the directory command to list the files and folders. So please remember Windows and Linux commands. You will see a lot of those questions where they'll ask you a question related to that command, both for Windows and Linux. CD command is used to set focus to a different working directory. Move command and copy command where you can transfer files contained in a single directory. Xcopy, so I was able to see a question related to these two, Xcopy and Robocopy. Xcopy is a utility that allows you to copy content of more than one directory at a time and retain the directory structure. But Robocopy is better than Xcopy. Robust, another file copy utility which is designed to work better with long file name and NTFS. So if you have to make a choice between copy, Xcopy and Robocopy, go for Robocopy. To create a directory, you can use md command. To delete empty directory, you can use rd directory or rmdir. If the directory is not empty, you can remove it by using this switch. You can use Q to suppress confirmation. Like it's asking, do you allow or not? Yes or no. It will not ask if you do /Q. So please remember those important window commands. Desk part is a command interface underlying the desk management tool. Desk management tool prevents you from completing certain destructive actions such as deleting the file system or boot volume, but desk part is not restricted in this way, so you need to use this with care. The format command writes a new file system to a drive. This process deletes any data existing on the drive. Check disk scans the file system or disk sector for fault and can attempt to repair any problems detected. There's also a version of check disk which is auto check, which will also run automatically if system detects file system error. Check disk cannot fix open files, very important, so you must be prompted to schedule the scan for next system restart. Check disk X /F attempt to fix the file system error, but /R is going to attempt a recovery of bad sector. Shutdown command where you can safely halt the system or log out. Like you can give option shutdown, maybe R to restart shutdown, S to shutdown, shutdown L to log off, or H to hibernate. Please remember, I was able to see a question related to these things. So please remember those switch. So /H save the current session to the disk before powering off the computer. /L is log off, close all open programs and services started on the user account but leave computer running. /R is for restart, close all open program and service before rebooting without powering down. This is also called soft reset. There's also SFC, which is a system file checker. It gives you a minimal interface for verifying system file and restoring them from cache if they are found to be corrupt or damaged. So these are the options. Scan now, SFC/scan now runs scan immediately, or scan once is going to schedule a scan when computer is next restarted, or SFC scan boot is going to schedule a scan that runs each time the PC boots, And winver command, when you type winver, you are going to check the Windows version. You can directly go to system, click on properties, but this is a shortcut. Version refers to a feature update through a year month code. For example, if you see 16.07, you might have seen in Windows 11 it just says 16.07. That means it is released in 2016, and 07 is the first half. Like you might see 21. So this is released on 16/7. So 7 is the month, right? July 2016, and this is 21H. So 21 is the year 2021, and H1 is the first half. So please remember those codes. Right, guys, this is lesson 11. Now let's see lesson 12. So please remember, most of those questions were from lesson 10 and 11. Identifying operating system types and features. Mac is redeveloped from kernel of another type of operating system called Unix. Kernel is a low-level code that mediates access to system resources for other processes installed under operating system. In theory, the maximum volume size is 16 exabit in NTFS. Journaling makes recovery after power outage and crash faster and more reliable. REFS is only available for Pro for Workstation and Enterprise Edition. However, it cannot currently be used for boot volume. REFS, which is Resilient File System, is being developed as a replacement for NTFS. Windows Home Edition does not support dynamic disk and encryption. So guys, please remember, most of the features are not supported by Windows Home. So there's a question which is asking you to make a choice. So please remember that all the other operating systems, like you have Windows Pro, you have Enterprise, Ultimate, and all. If you compare that, you have like education, you have Pro for workstations, or all those operating systems. But if you have to make a choice, they will give you a question asking which features it doesn't support. So Windows Home doesn't support most of those features, like dynamic disk encryption. Dynamic disk allows a space on multiple physical disks to be combined into a volume. The only significant drawback of NTFS is that it is not fully supported by operating system other than Windows. Mac can read NTFS drive but cannot write to them. Alright guys, so FAT32 is a variant of FAT that uses 32-bit allocation table. Normally supports volume of up to 2 TB. Maximum file size is 4 GB -1. exFAT is a 64-bit version of FAT which is designed for use with a removable hard drive and flash media. Guys, please remember this. So if I talk about Mac, they will ask you different options in Mac. What is the use? I'm going to cover that. But if you got to remember the files, please remember exFAT. Linux, like NTFS, exFAT supports large volume. Linux supports ext3, which is a 64-bit file system with support for journaling. Linux can also support a FAT32, designed as vFAT. Windows 11 requires a CPU or motherboard with support for Trusted Platform Module version 2. End-of-life system is a one that no longer supported by the developer or vendor. 32-bit CPU can only run 32-bit, but 64-bit CPU can run either. Very important. All 32-bit Windows editions are limited to 4 GB RAM. So that is where we need to go for 64-bit, because this is the major limitation. So all 32-bit Windows editions are limited to 4 GB system memory. 64-bit editions support much more RAM but have different limits for licensing. Like 64-bit edition for Windows also requires 64-bit hardware device driver authorized, which is signed by the Microsoft. Windows 10 with feature update 2004 and later supports only 64. You're not going to see 32-bit before this. Before this you can see, but after that you will only see 64-bit. So Windows 11 is only 64-bit, no 32-bit. Feature update 1607, which was in 2016. 7 is the July, I think. Jan, Feb, March, April, May, June, July. Yes, this introduced the support for dark theme. Home edition cannot be used to join a Windows domain. Please remember, Home edition cannot be used to join a Windows domain network. Windows 11 has SAM edition at Windows 10. OEM license means that the OS is pre-installed to a PC or laptop and is valid for that device only. A retail license may be transferred between computers, though it can only be installed on a single device at one time. Windows Home does not support multiple CPUs. It does support multi-core and hyperthreading, 64-bit addition is restricted to 128-bit GB RAM. Pro Enterprise support Hyper-V and Home Edition does not. It can be also configured with Business Store. Pro Enterprise Education support Group Policy Editor and BitLocker. Home has, guys, this is very important. Home Edition has RDP client, but it does not have an RDP server. So what does that mean? You cannot connect to Windows Home, but from Windows Home you can connect to the server. Windows Pro for Workstation has the same feature as Pro but supports more maximum RAM. So they will give a question, a scenario where they will include a lot of that RAM. So please choose Windows Pro for Workstation. And advanced hardware technology such as persistent system RAM. Windows Enterprise and Education editions are only available through volume licensing. Enterprise has several features that are not available in Pro, like support for Microsoft Direct Access, App Locker, all of that. You don't need to understand what they are, but just remember if does it support. Pro Education support two-way multiprocessing, 128 core and restricted to 2 TB RAM. Pro for Workstation and Enterprise support four-way multiprocessing and up to 256 core and restricted to 6 TB RAM. Now there was a question related to this concept. In place, what are the different upgrades you have? One is an in place upgrade, which means that setup program for the new version is launched from within the current operating system. In July 2016, Microsoft released a Windows 10 feature update called Windows 10 Anniversary Update with the number 1607. Quality updates or security and reliability patch, while feature updates can include new components and remove old ones. Right guys, so that is it about lesson 12. So 10, 11, 12 we have covered 3 lessons and the important points. Now lesson 13 is supporting Windows. Mac, now let's see what we need to understand about Mac. Is redeveloped from a kernel of other type of operating system called Unix. An attendant installation is where installer inputs the configuration information in response to prompt from a setup program. There are 2 main types of attendant installation. One is a clean and one is in place. Clean means installing the OS to a new computer or completely replacing the operating system software on an old one. In place upgrade means running setup from an existing version of the operating system. An unattended installation uses a script or configuration file to input the choice and setting that need to be made during the setup. In Windows, this is known as answer file. Unattended installation are also often completed using image deployment, but most computers now come with a pre-boot execution environment where the client uses information which is provided by the DHCP server to locate a suitability configured server that holds installation file or image and starts the setup process. So guys, I remember there was also a question on DHCP. You need to understand what DHCP does. So they will ask you a scenario and you need to choose a particular tool there. So you need to understand what DHCP does. Information about partitions is stored on a disk itself in one of the 2 types. Either it's a master boot record or GUID, globally unique identifier partition table, GPT. Master boot partition style stores a partition table in the first 512 byte sector on the disk. A given physical disk can contain up to 4 primary partition, any one of which can be marked as active. So that active has the operating system and therefore made bootable. Extended partition does not have boot sector and cannot be made active. The drive containing Windows operating system file is known as boot partition. When the disk uses MBR partitioning, system firmware must be set to use the legacy BIOS. If boot method is set to UEFI, disk will not be recognized as a boot device. So sometimes it can happen, the customer or maybe a customer says that it's not recognizing his boot device, so maybe he has just made a mistake. Windows allows up to 128 partition with GPT. GPT also supports larger partition 2 TB plus and a backup copy of the partition entry. GPT style disk includes a protective MBR for compatibility with systems that do not recognize GPT. When disk uses GPT partitioning, system firmware must be set to use UEFI boot. If boot method is set to BIOS, disk will not be. So same thing can happen. So this is very important. It can generate an error. A factory recovery partition is a tool which is used by OEM to replace the OS environment to its ship state. Many of the software applications available for Windows are still 32-bit. In 64-bit, they run with a special application environment called Windows on Windows 64. Like you might see a shortcut in your file somewhere in the desktop folders. Desktop applications are installed from a setup file. In Windows, they use either .exe or MSI. App from Mac can use DMG or PKG. Please remember those formats. Linux uses DB with APT or RPM for yum. When a computer starts, the firmware runs a power on self-test to verify the system components are present and functioning correctly. It then identifies a boot device and passes control to the operating system's bootloader process. With a legacy BIOS, firmware is going to scan the disk, identifies a boot device and reads the MBR in the first sector, but advanced boot options menu allows the selection of different startup modes for troubleshooting. System restore allows you to roll back from a system config change. So if something happens bad, that's why you do a system restore to fix that problem. Now what system restore does, it does not delete the user data file. So if sometimes I was troubleshooting a computer when I did a system restore to some of my customer and his computer was not working, and I don't know what happened, like he was like blaming me, like you deleted my files. So I mean, it would have it was not there maybe earlier, but he could see at that time, and he was just blaming me that you did it. So those things can happen, but it says that system restore does not delete your user data files. Use the system protection tab, which is open in the advanced system setting, to select which disk to enable for system restore and configure how much disk capacity is used. Disk must be formatted with NTFS, have a minimum of 300 MB and 1 GB in size. Windows will try to create a restore point when it detects the PC is idle if no other points have been created in last 7 days. Also, in response to application or update install, it's going to create a restore point. To restore the system, you got to open system restore tool. Desktop applications are removed with a reset. Keep my files. So you are going to, when there's any problem with the operating system, like blue screen of death, you can enter boot record.fix MBR to attempt repair of the MBR. Do not use this option if the disk uses GPT partitioning. You can also use this command fix boot to attempt repair of the boot sector, or rebuild PCT to add missing Windows installation. So they give you a scenario where you need to choose a proper command. Process such as authentication and backup depend on time reported by the local PC being closely synced to the time kept by the server. So time is very important in investigation also. Now lesson 14. I am planning to complete it in 1 hour, but let's see. So lesson 14 is manage Windows networking. So please remember those commands in networking. When you connect to a new network, the network location awareness service prompts you to set the network type. If network type is set as public, Windows Firewall is configured to block all the access and make host undiscoverable. If network is set to private, firewall setting allow host discovery and folder print sharing. So there's a big confusion. You might be choosing public, but public is a blocking. So private is more of removing those restrictions. So please remember those modes when you try to connect your machine or when you try to connect your laptop to a wireless. You might see those settings. So please remember, public is more of a restriction, but private is more of allowing those things. So if someone says that there's no folder printer sharing, maybe he has just chosen that as a public. You can define the network type as metered and set a data limit within the windows to avoid risk of exceeding those provider cap. An intercepting or transparent proxy does not require any client configuration, and some proxies are auto configuring. So there are two types of proxies. One is a transparent and one is non-transparent, right? So when it's a transparent, it does not require any configuration. So these are the important commands. ipconfig/release when you want to release that IP, or when you want to renew it when there's a DHCP issue. Please remember, there was a concept, there was a question based on this concept. Display DNS when you want to see the DNS, or you want to flush the DNS because if there's any DNS issues, or this is a loopback address. So there's a question where you need to choose which is the loopback address. So this is an NS lookup where you can just check the mail exchange for this site. So different commands, please remember what they do. Host command return The name configured on local machine. Traceroute command line utility is used to trace the path a packet of information takes to get its target. An alternate to traceroute is a path ping, which does a trace and then ping each hop rather than a given number of time for a given period to determine the RTT, round trip time. It's going to measure the link latency more accurately. The output also shows packet loss at each hop. Netstate can be used to investigate open port and connection on the local host. So please remember all those commands. Security control is a safeguard or prevention method where you avoid, counteract, or minimize risk related to personal or company property. Procedural controls are applied and enforced by people. Logical controls are applied and enforced by digital or cyber systems and software. If an account is deleted and then recreated with the same username, SID will still be different, and any permission assigned to the account will have to be recreated. Implicit deny means that unless there's a rule specifying that access should be granted, any request is denied. So default deny. Then you go for, so this is implicit. If there's no implicit, you go for explicit. So implicit is a default one. Least privilege means the user should be granted the minimum possible right necessary to do his job. Local account is defined on that computer only. Microsoft account is managed through an online portal and identify an email address. Account type can be switched from Microsoft to local or local to Microsoft. Yes, that is possible. Security group is a collection of user account. User account that is a member of an administrative group can do all management tasks. So they have very high access to all files and objects. Standard account is a member of user group. This group is generally only able to configure settings for its profile. However, it can also shut down the computer, or it can run desktop applications, install and run store apps, and use printers. Guest is only present for legacy reason. There is also power user group, which is present to support legacy application. This group was intended to have intermediate permission between admin and users. So please remember what are the permissions these groups have. So net user command, if you want to add a user account and force the user to choose a new password at first logon, you can do net user dmartin password and add these details. Logon password is yes. Disable the dmartin account, active no. Show the properties, just net user and dmartin. Add the dmartin to the admin local group, net local group admins dmartin add. So these are commands, please remember them. UAC, we had this in the question. User account control is a Windows security feature which is designed to protect system against malicious script and attacks that could exploit the powerful privilege assigned to accounts that are member of administrative group. A soft token is also known as one-time password. Windows local sign-in, the local security authority compares the submitted credential to the one that is stored in SAM, Security Account Manager database. It's a part of registry. This is known as interactive logon. So when you type the password. Single sign-on is where a user authenticates once to a device or network to gain access to multiple applications. So please remember, you're going to see a question based on this concept. A DC stores database of network information called Active Directory. A member server is any server based system that has been joined to the domain but doesn't maintain a copy of Active Directory database. An organizational unit, just one second. An organizational unit is a way of dividing a domain up into different administrative realm. You might create OU to delegate responsibility for administrating company, department, or location. A domain group policy configures computer settings and user profile settings. Domain group policy objects can be applied to multiple user accounts and computers. GP update is used to apply a new or change policy to a computer and account profile immediately, but you can also use force to cause all the policies to be applied. GP result is going to display the resultant set of policies for a computer. So if you want to verify that with some command, that's where you can use GP result. So please remember these commands: GP update what it does, GP result what it does. Just one second, it is getting stuck because I don't know what happened. So let me just fix this one. I am not going to stop it because I know it's going to be a little bigger video, but I think we are. So let me refresh this, just one second. gp update. So these are very important, gp update, gp result, those commands. So you got to remember them because they ask these commands in your exam. So please remember those. So let me try to refresh this screen here. I know it is just getting stuck for some reason, not sure, because it's a PowerPoint, so sometimes it just gets stuck. So I need to just refresh it or open it once again to see what we were discussing here. Or maybe let me do Control Alt Delete, and then I'm going to go to Task Manager. I'm going to end this PowerPoint and use it again because I just want it to be in one video. I do not want it to be two videos. I know there's a little bit of problem with this PPT, but let me just restart it again. It's a technical thing, so I was checking with OBS how to crop. Okay, doing the OBS settings because I'm recording this with OBS. So alright, slideshow from beginning. Let's see what we were discussing. So we did 4 modules, 10, then we got 14, this also 10, 15. Okay, so we were doing, I think we did, okay, single sign-on, right? GP update, yes, we were doing this screen. Sorry for the inconvenience. Yes, so we were on this screen. So we need to remember this GPU result, and then let's see what we have after that. Okay, so a logon script does some type of configuration or process activity when the user signs in. Mobile device management is a class of software which is designed to apply security policies to the use of mobile device in the enterprise. Windows desktop versions are limited to 20 inbound simultaneous connections for the share. If you add a $sign at the end of local share name, it will be hidden from general browsing too. It can still be accessible through command line or mapping a drive to the same share name. A map drive is a share that has been assigned to a drive letter on a client device. So there was a performance based question based on share drive. So please understand the concept. So these are the commands. Okay, so net use commands. So if you want to display a list of services on a local network, you can use net view. If you want to view the shares available on a server named my server, you can use this command. If you want to map data folder on my server to this drive, you can use this command. Remove drive, you can use this command, and remove all drives, you can use this command. And explicit deny overrides anything else in most cases. When we're talking about the permissions, directory assigned permissions, explicit permissions always override inherited permissions, including deny inherited permission. For example, if a parent folder specifies deny write but account is granted allow write on the child, so the effective permission will be allow write. If both share, guys, I didn't see any question related to shares, but remember this: if both share and NTFS permissions are applied to the same resource, most restrictive applies within the file or folder which is accessed over the network. The Windows Home Edition cannot join a domain. Very important. Windows does not support joining the computer to a domain during the attended installation also. Home folder is a private drive mapped to a network share in which users can share personal files. Roaming profile, copy the whole profile from a share at login and copy the updated profile back to logoff. Folder redirection, change the target of a personal folder such as document, pictures into everything through the GPU. Ease of access is known as accessibility in Windows 11. I have covered this point in one of the previous slides, right? So we have just we have done till 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, right? 5 more to go. These are small. So first 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 were like bigger modules. Now these are like smaller ones. Managing Linux and Mac OS. Kernel is the software component that provides core set of operating system functions. A distribution or distros is a Linux kernel plus a distinctive type of package manager and a software repository with a selection of customizable shells, utilities, and applications. Shell provides a command environment by which a user can operate the OS and application. PWD prints the present working directory. Okay. CD is used to change the working directory, ls is going to list the content of the directory. Please remember those commands. One question, sure short. Cat is going to return the content of file. Find is going to use to search for file. Grep is used to search and filter the content of the file. cp is to copy files in SAM or different directory. Move is move files. rm is to remove or delete. And dfdu, so this is disk free, where you can view the disk free space, and du is disk usage. su is switch user, where if you know about Linux, you might be using those commands. If you are new to Linux, please remember them, like username, su username. Sudo command allows any account listed in the etc sudoers file used to run specified command. So the main advantage of sudo over su is that root password does not have to be shared between multiple. Sometimes you might be doing su, then go to the user, or sudo. So what's the difference? That's the main difference. cmod is to change permission, and cown is to change owner. So important Linux commands which we need to remember. apt is advanced package tool, which is used by Debian and works with .deb. Like apt is for apt, apt get, where you download the software. And yum is yellow dog updated modifier, used by Red Hat, works with .rpm. So these are some commands, like apt get update, but you want to refresh the local database with information about package available from repository. Or apt get upgrade all package. Or install a new application, apt get install package name. Or yum, if you want to refresh local database, you can do yum check update, or yum update check all up package with latest. Or install a new application, yum install package name. ps command is going to invoke the process table and record that summarize the current running process on a system. Top is used in the same way as task manager. ps is used more for non-interactive logging reporting. ifconfig is a legacy command similar to ipconfig. In Linux you have ifconfig, but now you have nnet tools. You have now ip command. ip, like you can just type ip addr, is going to give you that ip information. Dig to gather domain related information, like nslookup in Windows. So guys, there was a question based on this concept. Samba is going to enable the integration of Linux and Windows. There was a question asking an option which you can use for both Linux and Windows. You could create a custom backup solution using the cron task scheduler and file copy script. Backup could also use compression utilities like tar and gzip. So what are the features of Mac? Guys, remember those important points. Dock at the bottom of screen gives one-click access to your favorite apps and files, similar to Task Manager in Windows. Spotlight search, if you are a new Mac user, please remember them. Spotlight search can be used to find almost anything on Mac. Mission control is used for Windows management. It enables the user to set up multiple desktop with different set of apps. And system preference panel is equivalent to Windows setting app. So please remember those 4 options. You are going to see one question. I'll not let you know directly which question, but you're going to get one question in exam. Accessibility prepan is used to configure access to vision and sound options such as voice over narrative, off-screen elements, cursor size, motion settings, zoom tools, display control, contrast, and font size. So they will give you a scenario and you need to choose accessibility. Apple ID is used for the purpose from the Apple Store, purchase from the Apple Store, like accessing iCloud, other function. Keychain, where you can manage password for account, other website, Wi-Fi network. File Vault is a disk encryption product in Mac. Finder is the Mac equivalent of File Explorer in Windows. iCloud is Apple's online storage solution for its users. Microsoft Office, Adobe, Skype are just 3 examples of apps that are not available in App Store. So disk image is used for simple install, where package content just need to be copied to application folder. And PKG is used where app setup needs to perform additional action, like running a service or writing file to multiple folder. So please remember those 2 formats. You're going to see a question. Disk utility app can be used to verify or repair a disk or file system. Time machine is a kind of a backup in your Mac. Alright, now let's go to lesson 17, managing security settings. Confidentiality means that certain information should only be known to certain people. Integrity means that data is stored and transferred as intended and that any modification is authorized. We need to prevent unauthorized modification. Availability means information is accessible to those authorized to view or modify it. Vulnerability is a weakness, fault in a system that could be exploited by threat actor. Threat is a potential for someone or something to exploit a vulnerability and do a security breach. Risk is your likelihood and impact of a threat actor exercising a vulnerability. Malicious code that can use a vulnerability to compromise a host is called exploit. Vulnerability that's exploited before a developer knows about it is called zero day. So please remember these terms. You're going to see one question related to these terms. A legacy and about those attacks. One question on attacks. So please remember those attacks. A legacy or end of life system is the one where software vendor no longer provides support or fix for problem. Social engineering or hacking the human refers to the technique that persuade or intimidate people into revealing confidential information. Dumpster diving is coming through an organization garbage to try to find useful document. Shoulder surfing attack means that threat actor learns a password or PIN by watching the user type it over the shoulder. Tailgating, entering a secure area without authorization by following closely behind the person who has been allowed to open door or checkpoint. Piggybacking is a similar situation but means that the attacker enters a secure area with employee's permission. So here without employee is not aware, but here with his permission. Phishing is using social engineering technique to make spoof electronic communication seem authentic to the victim. Severe phishing is targeted phishing. It occurs when attacker has some information that makes target more likely to be fooled by the attacker. So guys, please remember those attacks. You're going to see one question. Whaling is an attack which is directly specifically against upper level management like CEO or other big catch. Wishing is done through voice channel. Evil twin is a similar so till now whatever we discussed, I have seen two questions in the exam. Evil twin attack is similar to phishing, but instead of an email, attacker uses a rogue wireless access point to try to harvest credentials. Footprinting is the information gathering threat in which attacker attempt to learn about configuration of the network and security systems. So this is information gathering. Spoofing threat is any type of attack where threat actor can masquerade as a trusted user or computer. On path, which is our man-in-the-middle attack, is a specific type of spoofing where threat actor can covertly intercept traffic between two hosts or network. DOS attack causes service at a given host to fail or to become unavailable to legitimate users. DDoS means that attacks are launched from multiple compromised systems referred to as botnet. Plain text password can be captured by obtaining a password file or by sniffing unencrypted traffic on the network. Cross-site script exploits the fact the browser is likely to trust script that appear to come from a site that users have chosen to visit. Cross-site script inserts a malicious script that appears to be a part of trusted site. Symmetric encryption cipher uses a single script key to both encryption and decryption, but asymmetric uses a key pair. A key pair is a private key and a public key that are mathematically linked. But please remember, the main drawback of asymmetric encryption is that a message cannot be larger than the key size. So that's why you use a digital envelope. You combine asymmetric and symmetric and HTTPS. A digital signature proves that a message or digital certificate has not been altered or spoofed. Key exchange allows two hosts to know the same symmetric encryption key without other host finding out how it is. This concept is very important. Like web, WP use RC4 to encrypt traffic but adds TKIP, temporal key integrity protocol. It's going to change password for every packet to try to mitigate various attacks against the web. Web 2 uses AES cipher, which is developed within the counter CCMP. AES replaces RC4 and CCMP replaces TKIP. So please remember, WPA3 replaces the four-way handshake with more secure SE. So if you have to choose an option, it is always WPA3, strongest. It replaces AES with GCMP. It mandates use of encryption for management frame to protect against key recovery attack and DOS attack that force station to disconnect. it encrypt this traffic in Wi-Fi open also. WPA2 PSK authentication uses a passphrase to generate the key that is used to encrypt communication, is also known as group authentication. There's also 802.1x that uses EAP, which allows use of different mechanisms to authenticate against a network discovery. Ideally, the physical placement of a type of router or network appliance should be made to a secure location. So till now I saw 3 or 4 questions related to those security concepts. You should keep the firmware and driver for home router up to date with the latest package or latest patch. SSID is a simple case sensitive name by which users identify the VLAN. SSID is the name of the access point. Port triggering is used to set up applications that require more than one port. A client UPnP device such as Xbox, PlayStation or VoIP handset will be able to configure the firewall automatically to open the IP address and port necessary to play an online game or place and receive VoIP call. An access control vestibule is where one gateway leads to an enhanced enclosed space protected by another barrier. This restricts access to one person at a time. So please remember man trap, access control vestibule, Sally port, or it has got different names. Alright, we have reached till lesson 18. So we start with 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Now we have 18, 19, 20. 3 more to go. So supporting mobile software, a device wipe does a factory default reset and clears all data, apps and settings. A factory reset removes all user data, apps and settings. Dragging an app to remove just hides the app. AirDrop is an iOS feature that allows the file transfer between iOS and Mac or a Bluetooth connection. Root access is obtaining root privilege on the Android device, and jailbroke is same thing on the Apple device. Exploit that enable the user to obtain root privilege. Sideload app, change or add carrier. So what is sideloading? When you download an app from a third-party store which is not authorized. Putting a device into developer mode makes advanced configuration setting and diagnose log data available. A bootleg app is one that pirates or very closely mimics a legitimate app. Alright, lesson 19. A device wipe does a factory default reset and clears all data, apps and settings. RDP authentication and session data is always encrypted, very important. Screen sharing is based on VNC. It works on TCP port 5900. Not all versions of VNC support connection. So I saw a question based on this concept. RDP runs on TCP port 3389 by default but can be changed to other port. Very important, Windows Home Edition does not include RDP, so you cannot connect to them, but they do include clients, so you can connect to other from them. I have covered this in the previous slide, but again, because this is very important. XRDP, you can run RDP server on Linux. Microsoft Remote Assistance allows a user to ask for help from a technician or co-worker through an invitation. So guys, it is a Microsoft feature, so please remember. Quick Assist works over the encrypted HTTPS port TCP 443. Backup protect against loss of data due to disasters such as file corruption or hardware failure. Data recovery is a task that enables you to restore user access to lost or corrupted data through backup. Archive attribute is cleared in full and incremental backup but not cleared in differential backup. Windows uses archive bit to determine the backup status. So this is also synthetic backup. Please remember, if we talk about backups, remember this synthetic backup. It is not generated directly from the original, but instead it is assembled from other backup job. It works as follows. So the chain starts with an initial full backup as a normal, and subsequently it makes a series of incremental backup. When the next full backup is scheduled, the backup software makes one or more incremental backup. It then synthesizes a new full backup from the previous or incremental backup. So the classic GFS, there is another which is a grandfather father son backup. It is a daily backup as sons, weekly backup as fathers, and monthly as grandfather. The initial full backup made on Monday becomes the first father, and following incremental daily backup or son, the last backup of the week becomes the next father. So what happens, like, it is a grandfather every 1 month, and every week you have a father, and daily backups are your son. So what happens, you need to remember this concept, because I was able to see a question on this GFS. There's another backup which is 3-to-1, which I'm going to cover. So please remember what they do. 3-to-1 states that you should have 3 copies of your data backup. across two media types, one copy is held offline. Regulated data is information that must be collected, processed, and stored in compliance with a federal or state legislation. Breach is where confidential or regulated data is read, copied, modified, or deleted without authorization. Malicious breach is also known as data exploitation. PII, personally identifiable information, is a data that can be used to identify, contact, or locate an individual, or in case of identity theft, to impersonate him or her. Personal government issued information is issued to individual by the federal or state government, is also PII. Healthcare data refers to medical or insurance record plus associated hospital and lab test result. There's also industry enforced regulations mandating data security. Example is the PCI DSS, which is for payment card. Regulation may set a minimum and maximum period of retention of data. Incident response sets out procedural and guidelines for dealing with security incident. Digital forensic is a science of collecting evidence from computer systems to a standard that will be accepted in a court of law. This guys, very important concept. A chain of custody forms record where, when, and who collected the evidence, who has handled it subsequently, and where it was stored. So please remember this, who handled the evidence, why they handle, when they handle. So this is a chain of custody in forensic investigation. Disk erase or wipe software ensures that old data is destroyed by writing to each location on a hard drive, either using 0 or in random pattern. I was able to see a question based on this concept. Most disk vendors supply low-level format tool to reset a disk to its factory condition. Secure erase does it. So please remember all of those options. You are going to see one question. Secure erase does zero filling on hard disk and marks all blocks as empty on SSD. Instant secure erase, crypto erase, uses the capability of self-encrypting drive as a reliable sanitization method for both HDD and SSD. Crypto erase destroys media encryption key, rendering encrypted data unrecoverable. Shredding disk is grounded into little piece. Incinerating disk is exposed to high heat. Degassing exposed to powerful electromagnet. So please remember those techniques. You're going to see one question. Linux shell script uses .sh by default. Variable is a label for some value that can change as the script executes. Argument or parameter is a variable that is passed to script when it is executed. Branch is instruction to execute a different sequence of instructions based on the outcome of some logical test. Loop allows a statement block to be repeated based on some type of condition. Windows PowerShell combines a script language with hundreds of pre-built modules called commandlet that can access and change most components and features of Windows and Active Directory. PowerShell script files are identified by .psi. VBScript is based on Microsoft Visual Basic programming language. Shell script is written for basic Windows command interpreter, is often described as a bash file. Bash files use .bat. JavaScript is associated with building web apps, while Python can be used pretty much for any programming language. So please remember those file formats about those scripts. You're going to see one question. Python is a general purpose scripting and programming language that can be used to develop both automation script and software app. In Windows bash file, netuse command does drive mapping. Same thing can be done with this. So please remember this command. So when I say anything, please remember. So make sure you remember it. All right. So the last one. I'm sorry, I'm not feeling that well, but I had to record this video because I did exam. So every time, when I do any exam, I record a video. Kind of, all those things are new. So I let you know, guys, what are the questions, because I forget. So like, it happens, like, we tend to forget things. So that's the reason I make it quick. I was not in a position to record it today, but I thought of, like, let you know, guys, that these are the important points. So this might be helpful to someone, like, let me know in comments if this is helpful. It's going to be helpful for others also. So do not use compressed air blaster to clean up a tuner spill or a laser printer within an office type area. You will blow fine tuner dust into atmosphere and create a health hazard. Use a PC vacuum cleaner or a natural bristle brush to remove dust from inside the system unit. ESD occurs when a path allows electrons to rush from a statically charged body to a component that has no charge. You need to wear anti-ESD wrist strap or leg strap to dissipate static charge more effectively. Surge is a brief increase in voltage, where spike is an intense surge. Blackout may cause by disruption to the power distribution grid, an equipment failure, or the accidental cutting of a cable during construction work, for example, may simply happen because a fuse has blown or circuit breaker has tripped. Clamp voltage defines the level at which protection circuit will activate. Lower voltage is better. Joule rating, amount of energy that surge protector can absorb. 600 or more is better. Amperage, maximum current that can be carried, or basically the number of devices you can attach. At the system level, an UPS will provide a temporary power source in the event of complete power loss. To work out the minimum VA, sum the wattage of all devices that will be attached to UPS and multiply by 167 to account for conversion. MSDS, material safety data sheet, will contain information about ingredients, health hazards, precautions, first aid information, and what to do if materials spill or leak. MSDS should also include information about how to recycle any waste product or how to dispose of it safely. Computer equipment is typically classified as waste electrical and electronic equipment. Many components in the PC, cell phones, tablets, and display screens contain toxins and heavy metals such as lead, mercury, and arsenic. Right, guys? So let me come back to my main screen. Yes, guys, so thank you very much. I was able to cover, so we have to finish it in 1 hour and I think 15-20 minutes. It is till now it's 1 hour 16 minutes, so I thought of closing this in 1 hour, but there were a lot of important points, almost 50 plus slides to go through. So my suggestion would be just go through the YouTube. I'm going to cover another video where I'm going to let you know how to prepare for the exam, but for this, especially for this exam, go to the YouTube, search some videos, and buy an official book, go through the practice labs, do practice questions, and go to this reference guide, you know, where I have tried to cover important points. Just go through that, and in the exam you might see maybe 50% of the questions coming from those concepts, 60%, 70%, but yes, surely it's going to help you a lot, because it was very helpful to me. I did exam yesterday only, so it was very helpful for me, and I did security plus, I did network plus, but A plus is very difficult. So sometimes, you know, you might be passing other exam, but you might not be able to pass this. I have seen those guys who have done CISSP, you know, they fail A plus. So you don't need to have overconfidence. I was working you know, at troubleshooting networks, so I was working with AT&T, and then I know about networking, I know about security, I know about cloud, I know troubleshooting. So for me also, you know, I know those things. It was a little difficult for me also, because what happens, maybe I just went through the book, I've gone through YouTube videos, I've gone through practice questions, and then I went to write this exam. But in the exam I found maybe it was little difficult, maybe I did not prepare that much, but I was able to pass. I know I'm going to pass it, that I know. So what happened, like, you know, when I saw the performance based questions, and it was entirely like, you know, I didn't understand what to do. 4 questions, you know, when I started doing this exam. So what happened is, like, you know, I have to start my exam, and then I'm sharing this with you guys also. So I started my exam and they did not accept my ID, so I have to use some other ID, which was a national ID, but they did not accept, saying that it doesn't have signature and all that. Maybe I didn't read the instructions all, but yeah, I used that ID earlier. They did not accept that, so I have to again, when they released my exam, what happened, like, it got stuck. So again, you know, I have to restart my system. Again, they released my exam. So in between, Proctor, you know, I was like, you know, looking like this at my screen. So Proctor thought, like, you know, so he gave me a warning. I was like, you know, I was almost done with the exam, so I got a warning from the proctor saying that, you know, your face is not fully visible. So this is the warning. So because it is a small camera, so I was not doing anything, because, you know, guys, this book is this much big, so you can't cheat in this exam. But proctor gives you a sort of warning. So I find that, like, you know, he just suspects something and he gives me a warning. So if he finds something I'm doing fishy or something, you know, bad, he can tell me directly on the face, like, you know, this is not allowed and all that. But I got a warning, you know, I was done with that. So I was kind of, you know, I saw performance based questions in the exam, and then what I did is I just went through all the MCQs. So without answering those questions, I just went next, and whatever I know, I just answered them. Whatever I don't know, I was like a little bit of doubt, I kept them on review. So next I came back, and then I started, you know, again thinking based on those answers. So this is very important, like, you give your best. I give my best. I have gone through the book, I have gone through videos, I have gone through everything. Now based on my knowledge, I'm going to answer whatever thing I think is the best answer. So based on that, I have chosen the best answer. So what happened, I got a message on my screen saying that, hey, you're not visible, this is the second warning. So I was like, I'm not doing anything fishy. Maybe I'm just reading the screen like this. Maybe they feel like I'm seeing somewhere. They can tell me directly like this is not allowed. But I find like I didn't find that kind of that was not something good from the proctor. But that was something they control it. Now based on they suspect something. Last time also it happened, especially with CompTIA. So what happened, I used WhatsApp on my laptop. So WhatsApp was closed, but that there was an app, but their software it detected that app and they stopped my exam. I was frustrated. Like 10 minutes my exam was stopped because their software detected. I mean, I was not using it, but that was installed in my laptop. So I have to remove the app and then my exam was restarted. So today also I felt like I was not doing anything because I have done, come on guys, I did a lot of EC Council exams. I did Network Plus, I did Security Plus, I did IT Fundamentals from the exam center outside. So how can CompTIA expect that I'll be doing something fishy? So the proctor felt, maybe I was like, watching like this on the screen. My head was not visible. They can simply tell me, hey Sheikh, your head is not visible, or instead of giving me the warning, this is the second warning, this is the third warning. So I did not like that. Maybe this is what they control, but I personally didn't like that at that time, because instead of giving me some warning, it doesn't make you feel good if you're getting a warning. You're not doing any phishing, but proctor feels that you're doing phishing. I mean guys, he doesn't have any solid proof, because I know I have not done anything bad, but they felt that I have done something fishy and they give me a warning. So I would say my suggestion would be to CompTIA or for any other exam body to tell me, hey Sheikh, please, your face is not visible properly, please focus your camera, instead of giving me a warning like this is not good. But anyway, this is what I thought of sharing because it happened yesterday only. It is still in my mind, like I was kind of confused. So I had to spend half an hour on my exam, but I just finished it. I did not spend that half hour because of that frustration, because I received a warning from the proctor. So this is something which I think should not be like that. They simply can tell me like, Sheikh, your face is not visible, please show us your face, instead of saying me, hey, you are doing something which I was not doing, of course. But anyway, so thank you. I'll see you guys in some other exam. So I am recording all the videos which is going to be helpful for you guys in any of those exams. I did EC Council exams, I did CompTIA exams, now I did IT Fundamentals, I did A Plus, Network Plus, Security Plus. If you want to do any of those exams, check my previous videos from my channel, YouTube channel. And then I'm planning for, after this I'm planning for CISA Plus, and then I go for CAS Plus, and then Pen Test Plus, and that's it. Then I'll just leave CompTIA and go with some other certification body. So see you guys in some other exam. Thank you. Please do like, subscribe and share, and also comment on this video. Do comment, keep me motivated, so I'll be recording some other videos which are relevant. Thank you. See you in some other video.